Welcome to the stream, Brian. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, guys.
It's great to have you.
Thanks so much.
Welcome.
I don't even know where to start. I mean, we were kind of in the same YC batch. My first company was in YC Summer 12.
That was Soylent? Or which
yeah,
one?
Soylent.
Yeah.
It's a weird story because I joined the company shortly after YC and I was in a different YC company. So, but that's a story for another day.
I give John problems all the time for not, tapping you on the shoulder and, demanding that you take an angel check in that era. But anyways.
Yep. Well, 2020 hindsight, I can assure you we were not like the hottest startup in that YC batch at the time. I mean, it was hard to actually raise our seed round, et cetera. But, obviously it worked out. It was not obvious, though.
Yeah. What was the incentive for joining Coinbase back during the YC days? Was it a full Bitcoin as a referral fee?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of stealing a page out of the PayPal book where, everybody would get about, I think you could, if you invited your friend and they onboarded, they got $10 of Bitcoin and you got $10 of Bitcoin. And at the time that was like about 1 Bitcoin. So
it's so crazy to think about.
Yeah, and there was a lot of people. I went around to like probably 1,000 or more people in the Bay Area at that time. And anybody I could find, I'd be like, hey, do you want some Bitcoin? Like, I'll send it to you on my phone. And I'd try to get them onboarded to the Coinbase app. And I think when we started out, it was like $5 or $6 for a Bitcoin.
Yeah. So how do you tell the story of Coinbase now? I mean, it's such a huge story. Do you think about it in particular eras? Is the going public era a different, distinct era, or do you even map it to like the bull cycles and the bear cycles? Does that have a tangible feel in the Coinbase story internal to the company?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think of it in different. So Fred Wilson had this great thing he told me one time. He said, like, companies have multiple founding moments on the way to being a public company.
Yeah.
And that was definitely true in our case. So the first era was like Fred Ursum and myself in an apartment, just grinding it out, like, 14-hour days, just doing everything ourselves, like answering customer support tickets, like trying to recruit people, trying to get anybody to join, writing code this ourselves, right? And so that was like the pre-product market fit, like how do we try to get something moving? And then you go through hypergrowth, right? And your problems totally change, which is like, how do we get a real set of leaders into this company? How do we not get hacked? How do we go raise more money, like build a real board? And so you go through this period of hypergrowth where we were like, we'd never managed anybody, but we were managing 25, 50, 100, 500 people. And we were hyper scaling, just trying to keep up with all the demand. And then, crypto went through ups and downs. You eventually, Fred decided to go found his own company, which was super successful, like Paradigm, and he's doing another company now. So I had to bring in an executive team. That was like its own experience with a bunch of infighting and blow-ups and drama. And I finally got an exec team that worked. And then we went public. And, Emily Choi is like our president and COO now. So she's like, it's multiple foundings along the way to get to these eventual outcomes. It takes like 10 years to be an overnight success, quote unquote.
Overnight success. We love overnight. We love 10-year overnight success.
We lost the overnight success button.
We have a soundboard and it plays overnight
every
success.
Every time somebody says it took them 10 years to really be successful, we hit that. But what other industries have you looked to for learnings to kind of like build through these boom and bust cycles? Because it feels like you guys are acclimated to that now, but I know this is, the case. Oil and gas is probably a prominent one. Were you able to pick up anything from outside of crypto to help you steer the ship through cycles?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, every company has different challenges, so I actually don't think ours are that bad. But one of the challenges we had when we were getting ready to go public was like our revenue was super unpredictable and volatile, right? Like we'd have a trading quarter where we would just blow it out of the water and we'd be like printing money, and then it'd be down like 70% the next quarter or something. And in the public markets, investors really love you to have these predictable revenue streams. I still don't to this day know why they're so fixated on that. It seems like they should be thinking about the growth potential, but they love the predictability of it. And so, we had to look at oil and gas. There's like some energy brokerage, like actually the traditional brokerages like NASDAQ and NYSE, like they have the same issue. If they can tell you, one of them told me one time, is like, if you can tell me what the S&P 500 is going to do next quarter, I'll tell you what our revenue is going to be. But of course, like if you can do that, you got it made in other ways. So, but whenever I feel like we're having a bad time, I always look at like the hard tech companies, right? Like the biotech companies in the public markets get beat up way more than we do. They have much less predictable revenue. Their revenue is pushed out way farther. All my friends who are working on hardware companies, I'm like, wow, they're really doing entrepreneurship. I'm like, they're always calling me up and like, I've got 4 weeks of cash. We're trying to raise money, and I'm like,
bail me out.
You've been trying to raise money like every month for the last 18 months, just living like 1 month to the next month, and like those guys have true grit. So in software, our margins are high, and it kind of covers up mistakes that we make. And we actually had revenue relatively early in our journey, whereas in biotech, you have to invest in it for 10 years to try to get your first dollar of revenue sometimes.
Yeah. There were a whole bunch of narratives around crypto back in 2012, even before decentralization, resistance to government control, anonymity, just faster payments, all these different things. What's the state of the union from your perspective? How would you grade the different executions across the original goals? Some of them have just kind of fallen by the wayside as we found different solutions to those problems. But what do you think we've knocked it out of the park on? And what do you think we still have a lot more work to do on?
Mm-hmm. Well, the ultimate vision for crypto was always economic freedom in my mind. In fact, that's the mission of Coinbase, is to increase economic freedom in the world. So that's like how to give people more self-sovereignty, more control of their money. It enables them to not only like live a freer life and have things taken away from them, but it's better for society, because if we have a society with good property rights and sound money and like rule of law and these things, you can actually try more things. Like if people are rewarded with the upside of their labor, they're gonna go try more ambitious things in the world. So you see that there's actually economists who measure across different countries, like how high is economic freedom, and you see that in high economic freedom countries, there's like higher GDP per capita, but there's also like less corruption, there's less war, there's lower infant mortality, like all these kind of downstream effects. So the ultimate potential of crypto is to get more economic freedom in the world. And we've been trying to push on that through a variety of ways. Like one way we've done it is by getting legislation passed in the US, or pushing on that. We had a big influence in this last election. The crypto voters showed up in a massive way. We had like 2 million advocates who raised their hand in the US saying they wanted to elect a pro-crypto Congress and candidates. We had like a couple $100 million in the Fair Shake Super PAC. And so we now have the most pro-crypto Congress that we've ever seen. And we're on the cusp of getting stablecoin and market structure legislation passed. The other thing is we've been pushing on our products, right? They have to be easier to use for the average person. Like the early crypto products were it felt like some computer scientists came from on high down the mountain and they tried to make this accessible to mere mortals. And like, that was never going to work. So the products are slowly getting easier and simpler for average people to use. And crypto is growing into these areas like payments and tokenizing securities. And it's not just like trading as a use case, right? So we're getting closer and closer, but ultimately I think crypto is going to update the entire financial system globally, and like the majority of all payments will run on these crypto rails. They're just faster, cheaper, more global, and that's how we're going to get more economic freedom in the world.
That makes a lot of sense.
Do you think the conversation around economic freedom over the next few years will shift away from the US and more towards emerging markets who are adopting digital assets, but may face pushback from their governments and potentially even more aggressive way than we have in the United States over the past 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, it's a great point, because I think the unmet need is higher in some of these other countries, emerging markets, right? Where people, like in Turkey, they're getting like 70% inflation a year or something. It's just like, it's devastating to their entire economy. People have very high demand for the dollar and then Bitcoin. Same thing in Nigeria, et cetera. Now, some of those markets are going to be very resistant to it, like especially if the government is not fully aligned with the people's interests. Like the government wants to run their fiat currency because then they can kind of print money and abuse it. And, it's one of these kind of original sins of like fiat currency, right? So, or like some of these markets have capital controls, right? Like in India. So I think the governments will be somewhat reluctant to embrace crypto in some of these places, but the average person will love it. Like the people are demanding it, they're rushing toward it. The governments are a little hesitant. And so in democratic countries, it'll be allowed because more people will vote for it. But in places like China, they're really cramping down on it. I don't think North Korea is going to add it anytime soon. So it's a little bit like the internet, right? China has the Great Firewall of China. North Korea has their own private internet. And so some of these like really corrupt regimes, I think they'll try to crush crypto, but in most places in the world, it'll happen.
North Korea even has their own Linux distribution, Red Star Linux.
Did they? I didn't know that.
They gave it a cool name. I mean, you got to admit it's a cool name.
It is a cool name. I want to talk about Base. Obviously, it's powering a lot of consumer crypto use cases right now. Like, how did that come about? What has it been like incubating something like that inside Coinbase?
Yeah, a lot of people have asked me about that because they're always surprised that like a relatively big company can still innovate or whatever. But I think the way that I can't take too much credit for it, by the way. The biggest thing that I did was we have a very entrepreneurial culture, different people we've brought in. And Jesse Pollock came to me at one point and he was like, hey, I want to work on a new chain. And I was like, cool, like take a small team, go run at it, like 2 pizza team or whatever, like 5 people. And I had no idea if it was going to work, but the biggest thing, he deserves all the credit, to be honest. The only thing I did was I kind of shielded it from the rest of the organization a little bit and just gave them time to cook. And he went through like 5 or 6 iterations, and I saw a couple of these along the way, and I was like, honestly, I have no idea if this is going to work. And it turned out to actually really hit. And so if there is like a secret to this, which I don't know if it's a secret, but it's like you have to allocate some percentage of your budget to these venture bets and make them small bets, because you want to have 2, 3, 4 people like working on it, kind of like a YC company, not like don't put 100 people on it or something. It's going to be like a big bureaucratic thing. As long as they're small bets, you can tolerate like 75% of them not working out, and once in a while something hits and it pays for all the rest of the bets. I mean, it's kind of like having a venture capital internal at the company. So we actually set up this thing called we call it like Next Bets. And twice a year, anybody in the company can come pitch. It's like a group of people, we call it like internal venture capital. And they're basically the people who run different product groups, but there's also some really kind of like smart young engineers, et cetera. Basically, if any one of them raised their hands and said, I want to fund that out of their budget, then you're greenlit to go do it. You don't have to get a unanimous yes. You just need one person to say yes. And there's actually some pretty big, like USDC, I will tell you, I actually voted no on USDC, which was a terrible. Now it's like almost $1 billion of revenue or something for us. And I voted no because I was like a little skeptical. I didn't think it was like decentralized enough or something. But luckily, somebody else on our team voted yes, so it got funded and it turned out to be a massive thing. So it shows you how much I know.
That's incredible. I want to talk about putting stocks on chain. You go back to that original like Peter Thiel lecture in the 90s talking about maybe we could have a digital dollar that's not backed by gold or the treasury, but actually backed by stocks. Is there a world where that happens? What needs to happen? Is there a world where Coinbase shares are securitized on chain? And I know you probably can't give like forward guidance around that, but like, walk me through the changes that would need to be made, and is that even a good idea in your mind?
Yeah, well, just starting first with that PayPal point that you made. I mean, there's a great book. I think it's called PayPal Wars. I believe it's about the founding of PayPal, and there was a lot of like that libertarian ideology of like economic freedom was in the founding team. As you can imagine, they went on to do many other things, and I think, like in many ways, crypto is fulfilling the vision that the early PayPal team started with around economic freedom. And the main reason I can think of for that, I mean, there's a lot of reasons. They got acquired by eBay, et cetera. The team changed in some of the motivations. But like at the end of the day, nobody wanted a US company to run the global financial system. Like if you were the Indian government or a random person in some country, like do I really want to put all my money in some US company? But if it was a decentralized protocol that nobody controlled, like kind of like the internet, it's like, okay, we'll all kind of integrate with that. And so Bitcoin was like the key innovation, I think, that unlocked that opportunity. You also asked about like kind of tokenizing securities. And I do think that's an exciting area. We're pretty interested in that as well. It's like the trading of stocks is just one more area of financial services that could be improved by crypto. I mean, as an example, there's a lot of people around the world who want access to US securities, but they don't have a simple way to open a brokerage account and track that. So it's like the international access would be better. You could get like perpetual futures markets spun up for these stocks, which would give traders more leverage. You could do 24/7 trading. You could do fractional shares. So I actually think like most traditional securities are going to get tokenized on chain in the next 5 years. We've been working a little bit with like the SEC task force on this and trying to find the right path to do it. So it's something we're interested in, but yeah, obviously nothing to announce today.
Where are you getting the most leverage from AI internally? I can think of a bunch of different potential applications, but I haven't seen you do online virtue signaling about it yet, like other certain CEOs have. But I'm curious, what you're excited about.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I think we're doing a lot of the current best practices that most people are doing with well-run companies, and then there's a couple areas on the horizon that are more crypto specific that I'll tell you too. So I mean, the basic ones you probably know. It's like we onboarded all of our engineers to Copilot and Cursor and everything like that. So we got 100% of them onboarded. That was good. Our customer support, I think like maybe 60% of inquiries are being answered by AI now, which is really good. We also, for a long time, been building AI models around fraud prevention and like detecting risky transactions. But you can, obviously, like any process within the company that has a clearly defined input and output, you can train a model on, and like generating compliance reports. Like so we're trying to integrate it everywhere. The ones that are a little more on the frontier or like crypto specific for us. So one is that I guess people are calling it agentic commerce, right? Which is like, your agent is increasingly kind of like your assistant, and it might need to book you a ticket to go somewhere, or it might need to get through a paywall or something. Like if you're like, hey, go read all the research papers from Nature on this topic and give me a report. Like, okay, those cost money to ingest it. And so AI agents are going to need to have a wallet to go pay for stuff. We think that crypto will be the backbone of that. Like USDC on Base is starting to be adopted by some. We actually released this open source thing called Agent Kit, which makes it easy for any LLM to have a wallet. And we're working on a couple of checkout type solutions with other players that we'll announce soon, where the AI agent can actually get through the checkout flow in many of these e-commerce sites and pay with USDC on Base. So I think agentic commerce will be a big one. I think it's also, we're going to get like AI agents that can be kind of like your RIA, like your registered investment advisor, or almost like your trading bot. So imagine like you're in the Coinbase app and you kind of tell them, hey, I want to put like $1,000 or $10,000 something into this account. And you're talking to a trading bot and you're like, just go make me money. I don't know. Like,
don't make mistakes. Tell it, make me, I joked about this before, 10% compounded return daily. Don't make mistakes.
Don't make mistakes.
Yeah. And it may have some questions for you, or like it may make mistakes. And like, there's a lot of details to figure out. But I think having a trading bot, like do a lot of that for you. And it's like, hey, like if it goes up a lot, lock in some gains, so I don't regret it later. Like you can give it kind of abstract concepts like that, and it knows how to make the limit orders for you or whatever.
Yeah. How do you think that, how do you imagine that type of capability really being dispersed? Because I mean, obviously there's people with, trading bots today, and they're actually, I imagine some of them are so effective that they just say, well, we don't actually want to release this because we should just use it ourselves. But it sort of could potentially tie into this dynamic between closed source AI and open source AI. And do you think part of Coinbase's opportunity is to make sure these types of tools are available to as many people as possible versus just a handful of traders?
Yeah, it's so we're not doing prop trading on our own balance sheet. So we're not like trying to be a hedge fund or something with a proprietary algorithm. So our goal would be to like make this available to as many consumers as possible. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of adjacent to financial literacy, right? Like many people might come in and be like, yeah, I want to make like crazy returns. And this thing can kind of tell you, well, okay, that's pretty high risk. Like, why don't you like dollar cost average into this diversified portfolio over time? And like that might be more in line with your risk appetite. But if you want to take 10% of it and try something more high risk, like, so it can teach people about these concepts. And while also doing what they ultimately want to do, what they would have done anyway in the app, but it's just making it easier for them.
Totally.
Can you talk about the extortion attack, how you handled it? And I'm particularly interested in going forward. There's a lot of tools in your toolkit. You can throw more money, more people, more technology at the problem. What's the next few years look like in terms of beefing up security?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, we've had a really good track record on security at Coinbase over the last 12 years. And even in this attack, we didn't see any private keys or funds accessed directly by the attacker. So what unfortunately, they were able to do is they were able to bribe some of our customer support agents and to share with them like personal information on customers, like name, address, et cetera. And they want this information. Attackers want this information because they want to text people, call people, try to socially engineer them, and to get them to send their money. And so, unfortunately, they were able to successfully do that with a handful of customers, which we've reimbursed 100% at this point. And then they sent us this demand once we were, they realized they'd been found out and customers were kind of getting educated about this. They sent us this demand for $20 million, or we're going to release all this information. And it was an interesting moment. We came together and thought about it. And on the one hand, we could have paid them the money, right? But we talked to a bunch of security researchers and people, and they were like, there's really, what typically happens in these cases is if you pay the extortion, they're just going to come back in 3 months and extort you again. Yeah. And it's like, do we really want to be in this situation where we're like funding their next attack and like rewarding this kind of behavior, or do we want to try to create a deterrent to this kind of behavior? So we decided to flip it. And as you probably saw, we put out a $20 million bounty for any information leading to their arrest and conviction. And that's been kind of a crazy experience. I mean, just as one data point for comparison, after 9/11, the US government put out a $25 million bounty on Osama bin Laden, and we put out a $20 million bounty on these guys. So crazy. We had like maybe 5,000 like tips or inquiries like come into the email that we put out there. Most of it was junk. And we kind of whittled it down. There's about like 70 or so credible leads, I would say. And we always have to be a little careful because some of these could be like the threat actor themselves sort of trying to throw us off the trail or run down some wild goose chase. Some of the other people sending in tips or leads are like other threat actors who kind of have beef with these guys, or they're there's kind of like no honor amongst thieves, right?
Yeah.
And so, which is fine with me, but it's...
No, I really enjoyed I saw the video that you put out, and I enjoyed imagining the dynamic of the thieves, sitting around a table, realizing that, the sort of game theory of who's going to turn in who, it was a nice visual.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's exactly what we wanted to create, was a real deterrent here. It's like, if you're going to attack our customers, you need to look over your shoulder and always wonder, like, who's going to turn me in, or who did I interact with in my entire life who might have known about this, who's going to turn me in. So anyway, I can't say too much more. We're working closely with law enforcement, but we're going to run down those leads and hopefully get a good result. I mean, you asked about beefing up security too, I think. And
just kind of going forward, you can imagine, let's hire more people, better people. Let's throw technology at this. Let's monitor comms and where data's flowing. Is this more of a technology issue, or a talent issue, or an oversight issue, or policies? Like how do you see investing in the next round of security?
The thing that popped into my mind, the way that you're already leveraging AI, is there's a world in the future where a more secure CX function would be entirely code. Right. And you wouldn't, it'd be much, you could create an environment where,
or at least AI oversight of everything, of every interaction. But yes, I'm interested to hear what your take is.
Yeah, well, it's a great point. I mean, the 60% of inquiries being answered by AI now, I mean, they're not going to get bribed. I mean, there are other threat vectors with AI too, right? Because people are always trying to jailbreak these agents and things. So there's not a perfect solution, and I don't think we're still gonna have like human in the loop on a lot of things for a long time. But yeah, never let a good crisis go to waste. Like, this was definitely a good moment for us to go implement a bunch of changes, and we mobilized a team of about 300 or 400 people right away that just went into overdrive, kind of trying to lock down a lot of these systems. A lot of it was not just our own systems. There's vendors that we work with that we needed to push them to hit a higher bar as well. We did relocate some of our customer support operations. The ones that got targeted the most were these overseas contractors and things like that. And you can imagine, like, some of the money being offered as bribes that would have been like pretty impactful even in the United States if people were there. And we need to have 24/7 coverage, et cetera. So it's not a perfect solution to like just move it all in the US and pay people more. Like, it doesn't 100% solve it, but we are relocating some of those support operations and then essentially just hardening our systems. Like, luckily we had some good controls already, which limited the scope of it, but we obviously didn't do enough, and so we've got to keep investing in that.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for younger builders, maybe the younger version of yourself? We had Chris Dixon on the show earlier today, and he said that crypto, one of crypto's biggest problems now is just a lack of talent. There is talent here, but it's probably could have 10 times more to create a lot of great outcomes. I'm curious if you feel the same way around kind of talent in the industry today.
Yeah, well, I think we've never had it easier actually recruiting great people into Coinbase. I think there is like a great, partly that's due to our scale, right? Startups have to really fight for talent. But I think if you look at like the top 5 most exciting tech trends in the world right now, like my 5 would probably be AI, crypto for increasing economic freedom and all that, brain machine interfaces, fusion energy, and longevity. I think is also in no particular order, by the way. Like there's a biotech company I co-founded called New Limit, which is working on epigenetic reprogramming, which is really cool. It's a longevity company.
We talked to the founder. We were blown away. We came away extremely excited by that conversation.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, so I think to me, it's like, how do we accelerate progress?
Sure.
And I think the smartest people from a talent point of view, like the smartest kids up and coming, people, whatever, they all want to work in things that are going to change the world. So like those are the top 5. And, I think like there's actually a pretty incredible amount of talent in crypto. It's like, you just got to go try ambitious bets and be okay with some of them not working. Like, I think sometimes people think that, well, Coinbase started and now it's big, and so they're just a success. And it's like, no, that's not true. Like we're trying these venture bets all the time. Like I told you about USDC and Base. Yeah. I mean, there's others that didn't work, right? Like we launched Coinbase NFT and it was pretty much a flop. Like we launched Coinbase in Japan. We invested all this money and time, like didn't work for a bunch of reasons I can tell you if you want. And we shut that down. And so we're constantly like, stay hungry, stay foolish. Like we're trying new ideas a lot, and you have to be okay with like 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4 just not working.
What about the Super Bowl ad? Was that a similar one person green lights it, and who greenlit it, and what was the story with the QR code?
Yeah, well, as usual, like success has many fathers and mothers, but it partially came out of a rushed, like a short time, time constraints breed creativity, right? So we actually didn't. I think by the time we bought the ad, we didn't have enough time to like go film something for months and months, and so the team just got really creative, and I don't even remember who it was in the meeting, like our CMO, and there was an agency involved, and it was a collaborative effort where someone was like, well, what if we did kind of like a direct marketing type campaign where we want people just to install the app, but you can never measure the result of most of these brand ads, right? You're always like, I don't know, did it drive revenue or not? Nobody really knows. So we're like, well, we could actually measure how many people just like scan it and sign up if we just put a QR code on the screen. So I don't remember who said it actually in the room, but obviously it worked. It was cool.
Yeah, and you tracked the ROI and it was positive?
Okay, so that's actually a very complicated. We looked at this for you with the exact details, but long story short, like, so our site actually crashed because we got about like 20. It was like 20 or 30 million visits in 20 seconds.
Oh my God.
And we knew there was going to be a big surge, and so we had like, I think the first page loaded and it was heavily cached, but then like 20 million people started going through the sign up flow, and like everything shut down. So we had to email a bunch of them later to come back and finish it. Long story short, so we lost like probably about a third of the value in just like overwhelming demand that we unfortunately couldn't scale to, but it would have been very profitable. It was still profitable depending how you count it.
The fact that we're talking about the ad today means something.
Very memorable.
Yeah, the brand value alone maybe paid for itself, even with none of the direct revenue.
I have one last question, then we'll let you get out of here. And feel free to just take it as like meta commentary on the nature of the question. But who is Satoshi Nakamoto?
So well, the official answer is it doesn't really matter, because like the idea stands on its own. And so if anybody ever comes out and we find out who it is, like in their will or whatever, but the unofficial answer, I think, is probably some combination of like Hal Finney and Nick Szabo and maybe one other person, but that's my guess, is that it was a collaboration between those people, and but ultimately it doesn't matter. And Hal Finney is frozen at Alcor, but he's no longer living, so we don't, but maybe if Alcor actually works, which is a big if, in the future we can bring him back to life, we'll find out.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
We'll have him on the show then.
Yeah, we'll have him on the show. We'll have him on the show.
Yeah.
That'd be fantastic. Jordy, any other questions?
No, this was great.
This
We'd
was
love
fantastic.
to have you back
Thank
on
you
again
so much.
soon. You're our first public company, Fortune 500 CEO.
Yeah, that's right. So thanks for doing this. This is a big milestone for us. We really appreciate it.
Well, I love that you guys are championing tech, and the enthusiasm is palpable. So I get to see your clips all over.
Enthusiasm? What are you talking about? Enthusiasm.
We're gonna need a bigger gong. We're gonna need a bigger gong.
We're gonna need a bigger gong. Thank you.
It's
for
great.
stopping
It's
by.
great having you on, Brian.
Yep.
And
All right.
thank you for the work that you do. We'll
We'll talk to you soon.
See you guys soon. Bye.
Bye.
Cheers.